Hello again, and welcome to War Stories Behind the Scenes Tales from the front lines of the media. I'm your host, Tom Curley. How the hell are all of you guys today? Uh, as you know, we talk about all sorts of crazy shit that happened when we were on the job back in the day. I worked at CBS, and I was there for 40 years. I was a director, and uh, and this guy here. He spent a long time in Boston, Mr. Garry Armstrong, veteran TV
Yes,
reporter.
I'm here.
Huh. How
This
you
is my
doing
little
today,
say hello
Garry?
to my little friend again.
My little
He was
friend.
supposed to be down in
Yes,
spring
yes.
training, but he got drunk last night, so we're going to have to send him by Federal Express. The Red Sox are wondering where he is. He's supposed to be the new big thing. Get the hell out of here, will you?
Hey, I I
How are you?
I saw a movie. I'm great. You know, it's funny. Speaking of Red Sox, I watched a really cool movie the other day. Popped up on Netflix. It was called The Catcher Was a Spy. Right? And it's a true
Okay.
story. It's a true story about a professional baseball player named Mo Berg, I'm pretty
Berg.
sure. It's played by
Moberg.
Paul Rudd. And he was, yeah, I see, Duke recognizes him. He was a professional baseball player for the Red Sox. And
Right.
he got recruited into the OSS. And he was a spy. And
Right.
he got read into the Manhattan Project, and he was given the assignment they needed to find out if Germany actually had a bomb or were close to having a bomb. And they
Okay.
knew that Werner Heisenberg, the famous physicist, Heisenberg uncertainty principle, was put in head was in charge of the German atom bomb project, and they decided that they were going to send him over there, and he had to decide whether or not Heisenberg was running the program, to actually building a bomb, or if he actually would. In other words, they said he could, but would he?
Yeah.
And if he decided it,
Yeah.
he was supposed to assassinate him. He was supposed to kill him. And it's a fascinating story. Okay, enough with the smartass remarks. It's getting a little much, and nobody's going to get that joke. Yeah, yeah, I get the joke. I understand. You can only measure the velocity or the position of something, but you can't measure them both at the same time. I don't think a lot of people are going to get that, and it wasn't that funny. No, no. I'm sorry, folks. This is my AI program, the Chronomatic 2000 instantaneous graphics generator. Um, and I'd be honest with you, I'd fire it, but I paid for the whole year subscription, and I can't figure out how to get it out of my computer. Well, anyway, knock it off, and let me get back to the show. Thank you. We're not going to talk about any of that in this week's show. Um, we, we I've got a couple of stories, but I'm gonna let you go first. We were talking before we get on the air about the putting mics on people. A couple of
Right.
the interesting stories I've had, where it's, it should be something easy, but it's not. Um, so yeah, you said
It's
you had one. So
yeah.
take it away.
You started it off last week talking about. Yeah. Well, last week you were talking about miking up one of the anchors, and she didn't take to it, which got me thinking about times I've mic'd up interviewees, and of course, as talent, that was not supposed to be my job. I wasn't in that union, and often you were told never, A, never touch the equipment, B, never try to use the equipment on other people. Well, I've told the story about the year that I'm trying to think of the director now, SOB, and Blake Edwards was the director. And that was a movie that satirized Hollywood, and Hollywood wasn't pleased with it, and they essentially they were trying to blackball the movie. So Blake Edwards took the cast, the entire cast, including the starring players. He took them around the country to drum up background and interest in the movie. And I can't believe it worked out. It started out as a cult movie, but because of that national tour, it got the attention it deserved. Anyway, it was late 80 or 81. I think the film was released in 81. So it was a Saturday, and I had a cameraman with me. Usually you would have a cameraman and a sound man at that point, but I just had a cameraman. And the stars are seated at this long table, which wasn't really great for doing interviews, or maybe it was visually. I don't recall. But anyway, we had wrapped up the formal interviews and it was time to do quick one-on-ones. I had done several people, including William Holden, who had a batch of Bloody Marys that he was working on. And in fact, I shared a little of that. So it was time to interview Shelley Winters, who at that time, she was still pretty, she hadn't uh, lost all of the weight that she had put on when she did the Diary of Anne Frank. She put on a lot of weight to play a more mature character. Anyway, too much side knowledge here. Shelley Winters was sitting at the table, and someone said, "Okay, it's time to do Shelley." And the cameraman said to me, "Garry, I'm changing tapes. Would you mic Shelley Winters?" And I didn't think twice about it, but as I picked up the microphone, I saw in the corner of my eye William Holden holding a glass of Bloody Mary, and he was smiling and also shaking his head, "No, no, no." I didn't really absorb that, so I go over and I start putting the microphone on Shelley Winters. And she was wearing this very tight, low cut sweater, and she had this Shelley Winters smile on her face. So I reached over and I'm putting the microphone on, and she's saying, "No, lower, lower, so I can see it, and it'll blend with my sweater." And I looked at her and I said, "Nice fabric," and she started to smile and she said, "Lower." I said, "Okay, fine," and I clipped the mic on cleanly the first time around. And yeah, we touched skin, but it wasn't anything uh, you would think of. And I went back and got behind the camera. And before I could ask the first question, she said, "I like a man with a slow, steady hand." And everybody's laughing at this point. And she said, "You have some of the best hands in the business." And William Holden at that point spat out his drink. Robert Preston on the other side was guffawing, and Blake Edwards was just blinking his eyes at me. So we did the interview, which was harmless enough, and we wrapped up the interview. And I may have done someone else, but put that on hold. And I walked over to the Shelley Winters and I said, I'm sorry if I offended you. And she said, "No, no, people are afraid to mic me." And then I asked, the obvious question. I said, "Well, why would they be afraid of you?" And she said, "Honey, just look at me." And I said, "Nice fabric." And she laughed again and she licked her lips. And I got the message. So that we
That's
were
awesome.
wrapping up, and Blake Edwards came over and said, "You're a brave lad." And I said, What do you mean?" She said, and then Blake Edwards said, "Shelley Winters has really buried a lot of people who have tried to mic her up, and you've just done the best job ever. The word will get out about you and Shelley Winters." And sure enough, the next
She
day, the gossip column writer in the Boston Herald, which was a tabloid paper, was doing a little write up on the movie people being in town. And she said, and the writer said, Gary Armstrong, who's always been known to be a very steady, a very laid back reporter, reportedly did his thing with Shelley Winters, and he'll get a gold star for that. And the next day,
That is
all this mail
funny.
came into Channel 7 saying, "Does Gary Armstrong have something to do with Shelley Winters?" And it went on for a while there, and I was getting slaps on the back from everybody in the newsroom. And one
That's
of the
great.
women came over, and one of the women reporters came over and said, "Gary, we never knew you to be like that." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You were flirting with Shelley Winters." And I said, "No, I was putting a mic on her." That's not what we heard. We heard you were feeling her up and that you touched her breast. and I just looked blankly, and someone else said, "Oh, are they big? Are they real?" And I said, "I don't know. I just put the microphone on." And they said, "We don't believe that." And so on and so on and so on. So that's my story about miking Shelly Winters.
Every audio guy has a ton of stories. Um, it's a very delicate thing. And
Yes, it is.
we used to say, it's like, look, I'm an audio guy. It's like being a doctor. I have a waiver. This is purely professional. And but
Right,
even so, just run this up under your dress? Well, I know I'm
right.
99% sure I've probably told this in other shows, but my favorite one was a guy I worked with, Billy. He had to go out and mic up Paulina Poroskova back when she was like on the cover of Swimsuit Illustrated. She was a
Uh,
very famous
yeah.
supermodel, married to Rick Ocasek of the Cars. Very nice person. But he came into the control room and he was just in shock. And we would, "What's the matter?" He said, "I I I I just mic'd up Paulina Poroskova, and and she was just wearing a blazer, a coat, and that's all she was wearing, and I had to put the mic on, and I was trying to, like, not look, but I couldn't, and we're all laughing, and he's going, I'm never washing this hand ever again," and so it was, so I got two stories. Um, uh, have you ever had a moment in your career where you were in such a panic that you thought, "Oh my God, I can't do this. I'm going to get fired. I can't do this. I
Yes, I
I'm
have.
just going to leave. I'm going to leave. I I
Right.
I'll never work in broadcasting again, but I I just panicked." Well, it happened to me, and it was very interesting. At CBS, they have a hierarchy in the audio department. Um, there was a thing called an A1, which was the supposedly the head audio guy. But usually
Hmm.
it meant an A1 was the mixer. He was the guy that actually sat at the board and mixed, and
Right.
everybody else were A2s. Okay. You would be working the racks, you would be patching stuff up, or you'd be
Right.
answering the telephones or making the calls, or you'd be on the floor miking up the talent, or you'd be just some kind of an assist. But the A1 was the guy in the control room. So they also had a remote department, which the technicians, that's all they did. And then we had us who were in the studio, in the broadcast center, or in one of our
Right.
satellite studios, down on 26th Street where we did Guiding Light, or up on 76th Street where we did As the World Turns. But we were studio guys. Now, the remote guys always looked down on us because they were superior, because they did remotes and they had to go all around the country and set stuff up from scratch, and we used to look down on them because we knew for a fact that if they ever came into the studio, they wouldn't have the slightest idea how anything works because they've
Right.
never been in the
Right.
control. I mean, it was a joke.
Right.
Nobody really cared. So one day I get a call from scheduling, and they say, can you work Sunday? Which for me would have been overtime. And I said, sure, what is it? And they said, the NBA draft pick. It's at the Hyatt Hotel. They gave me the address in New York City. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I show up. It's now I'm just assuming, what that word assume does, that
Yeah.
I was a grunt. I was going to be pulling cable. I was going to be,
Right.
hooking up mics, just, the lowest of the low. Okay.
Right. Right.
So I get there at 7 in the morning, and I'm standing there, and a 40-foot remote truck pulls up. All right. State of the art.
Hmm.
One of our remote trucks. And our boss, our engineer in charge, the remote chief,
The big man Numero uno, honcho. The head cheese.
or the T. It comes out. I go, hi. So, what am I doing? And they said, you're the A1. And I went, what?
Huh?
And I said, yeah, you're doing. I said, well, all the other A1s were out or on vacation or sick. And on the
Mhm.
list, I'm a mixer. Okay. I'm an A1. But I had never done a
Right.
remote in my life. I had never been in a
Wow.
truck in my life.
Oh,
Okay. So
wow.
I'm going like, I'm going, no, I can't do that. These guys, they do this all the time. And they went, not in the
Mhm.
truck. Said, listen, we'll bring everything down. We'll plug it in for you. Don't worry. We'll take care of everything upstairs, but that's your problem. So there I was at 7 in the morning. I'm standing in this remote truck and I'm in the back because the audio booth is always in the back. Anyway,
Mhm.
and I'm in this. There's a mixer and there's an empty patch bay, and I I panicked and I was like, I can't do this. I've never
Right.
had such a panic attack in my life, and I said I'm just gonna have to tell them I can't do it, and we're not gonna get on the air for the NBA draft pick, which is sort of a big thing for CBS. So I
Yes.
know I'm going to lose my
Yes, it
job.
is.
I'm going to lose my job. And I'm already thinking, well, I don't know. I guess I can go back and live with my parents. So I say, all right, calm down, take a breath. And all right, let's see if I can just get tone, something from the patch bay into the mixer and make it come out of the speakers. So as
Right.
I'm, going there and I hear a voice behind me and it says, hi, can I help you? And I turn around and I go, hello. I go, my name's Tom. He goes, yeah, my name is Bill. He said, I'm here with the truck, the rented truck. And that's when I discovered this amazing thing. With rented trucks come rented people who know how the truck
Ah.
works.
Ah.
And I went, oh, could you? And he says, sure. What do you need? And he patches everything up. Everything was on. And the director and the producer for that show were my two biggest nemesis. My two biggest
Right.
nemesises. My Lex Luthor and my Joker. And so it was
Got
the
it.
pressure was even more. So my point is
Uh,
that it worked. He hooked everything up. They hooked everything up, and
wow.
all I had to really do was just sit there and open up the faders, which I had no problem with. So it went off without a hitch, and I learned a lesson, like from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't panic. Just take a deep
Right.
breath and find the guy who runs the truck. Because there's always one. That you know so it was good, and I never panicked after that. I never or if I did find
Great
myself
story.
panicking, I went, yeah, 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 true story, true story.
Well, before you go to the other one, a couple of things here. Um, we, those of us who have been in the news business and faced deadlines and faced situations such as the one you faced, and we somehow we get past the panic and we do what we have to do. And certainly, as a reporter, there were numerous occasions when it could have been panic time, and I thought, how am I going to get past it? My usual level for panicking would be stories I didn't comprehend. And as I've said before, stories involving science or math or computers. Golly, they drove me crazy 30 seconds before going on the air. And I think similarly to what you thought, I thought, I've got to do it. As long as I talk, it doesn't really matter what I say, as long as I talk and it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, it won't make any difference. And so that's what normally got me on the air. Something in your head says, start talking. Doesn't matter. It's the other side of Yogi Berra. And so that's how I got through them. The one occasion that I really came close to what you felt was, and I think I told this one before, was when we had that complex Advent computer system. And I had
Avid.
not been
Haven't.
able to master it in a week. Yeah, I had not been able to master it in the preceding week when everyone went through classes. So it had been made clear to me on Friday, if I couldn't use it on Monday, that I might be seeking employment elsewhere. And that's the weekend where Marilyn took me into the studio and told me to shut up and just watch what she did. And of course, she was able to make me grasp it. And I lost that panic and I was able to use it come Monday. But it's such a scary, scary thing when you're looking at that moment.
Oh, absolutely. I my last job before I left, retired, and even after I retired, was a thing called the Bulletin Center, which we've talked about before, which is where one of us has to sit in a studio that we specially designed and built, so that one person could operate it. It was designed for a whole crew, and we were the people that were on standby, uh, in those holes, in those gaps, when there was no crew in the building, in case something happened, that we would need to flash on the network with a special report. And this came because I've explained this in different shows. CBS got caught with their pants down over the years more than once. So we were the insurance policy. So our job was to sit there and be prepared. But the problem was is that it started at 7:30 at night, which everybody'd gone home. And after I retired, I wouldn't do that maybe for like 2, sometimes 3 months. And then they'd say, "Can you come in?" And I'd come in. Now you have to
Hmm.
understand, I had to I had to run the switcher, I had to run the graphics, I had to run the audio, I had to man the phones, I had to utilize the news production system called ENPS that ran everything. I had to know all of these things, okay? But I
Right.
would come back. I hadn't been there for 3 months, and I walked in one day, and everything had changed. The interface
Wow.
for the ENPS system, which ran everything, was completely different. I didn't even know how to log on. I went, what? And I had to figure it out, but I couldn't. And of course, I couldn't call anybody. I couldn't call maintenance. I couldn't call because they'd all gone
Right.
home. And so, I thank God I would call one of the other directors that did the shift, and they would walk me through it. But after a
Hmm.
while, I just said no. I'm not going to do this because I can't come back after 6 months. Because when you're there day to day, you don't notice that they've
Yeah.
changed this little
Right.
thing or this little thing, or the monitor system has been changed. But that leads me into my last. The Bulletin Center was a weird shift. Uh, it used to be from the weekend. It was the weekend from 7:30 at night, till 3 in the morning, and it was Friday night, Saturday night, and then there was a day shift. Actually, there was a day shift I think on Saturday and Sunday, but the day shift only, even though you were there for 8 hours, you were only on duty for 2 hours. 11:30 to
Okay.
12:30, because that's when the weekend news crew who were there went to lunch. So technically, they had to cover the lunch. All right. Now, if we needed to flash on, they would not come in to me. They're all there. They would do it in the evening news studio where they do the weekend news. All right. We were there for
Right.
emergencies when there was nobody, but they had to cover it. And then there was, there was 11, it was a half hour from 11:30 to 12 when the Saturday morning and Sunday morning crews left and the weekend news came in. And then there was the lunch hour from, I don't know, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So that was it. And nobody ever came in to visit me. Most people forgot that I even existed. They would come in at the end of the day to make sure somebody was there, because like at 7:30 when the show was over, if
Right.
the person wasn't there for the bulletin center, they had to stay until you showed up. And if
Right.
they had to stay past 7:31, You had a pissed off crew. Not just the crew, the producers, the director. You got a lot of people ticked off at you because I had to stay an extra, 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at my schedule and when I had to work. And you know how when you look at your calendar, if, like, say, the end of this month is Thursday and the next month starts on Friday, the 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 February part or whatever month it's darkened out because that comes
Yeah.
up in the next
Yeah.
month. So somehow or another, when I was looking at the calendar, I said, okay, I've got to do this, this, and this day, and this day, and I did. So a couple weeks later, I'm filling out my timesheets because I hadn't filled them out for a while. So I'm filling out all my timesheets, and I suddenly realized that wait a minute, I was actually scheduled to work last Sunday, and I didn't show
Right.
up because I didn't think I had to work. I didn't go to work, and I was mortified. I have never done this in my entire career. And I'm
I
going like,
understand.
oh my God, how could I have done that? I just didn't show up for work. I'm going to be in so much trouble. And I stop and I go, wait a minute. Nobody noticed. Nobody
Oh,
called me.
that's even worse.
I didn't. I didn't get in any trouble. Holy shit! I literally didn't show up for work, and nobody noticed. What the? So because nobody ever. I was like the Maytag repairman. So the
Oh
loneliest guy on
God.
the planet, right?
Oh, that's one of the virtues of working behind the scene, behind the camera. Um, if that had happened to me, obviously someone would have said, "We didn't see you that day. Where were you?" But you were not expected to be seen visually,
I
so you
was
had that
not
going for you.
expected to be seen. Yes, we did. It was funny. So that's that. So we did it again. Holy mackerel.
Oh boy.
We just walked through another half hour, fooled them again. So let's see how quickly we can get through the credits. Serendipity, Seeking Intelligent Life on Earth. Marilyn is back on the job posting. And Voicescapes
Hmm.
Audio Theater, Best in Audio Theater and Drama, a half-hour radio show. Darn, it's still funny. And of course, my sister podcast, Get Off My Lawn, where I talk about life, the universe, and whatever's written in the teleprompter. So, Gary, it's a fun show. And
Yep.
after our brief hiatus, we'll see you next week.